In this, our third installment in our small series on Islamic finance podcast, we will talk on the two kinds of contract on which Islamic finance is based. The first kind are the deferred sales contracts. The second kind are profit and loss sharing contracts. And within each category, you have different specific models of contracts, which we will get to. For more detail on this information, take a look at the book by Brian Kettle, Islamic Finance in a Nutshell, a Guide for Non-Specialists. It is a very useful, valuable resource. First, let's take a look at deferred sales contract. And the first contract that we will zoom in on is the Murabaha contract. Imagine an individual wants to purchase a good but does not have the funds yet. Your washing machine might be broken and you need a new washing machine in order to wash your clothes, but you cannot afford right now to pay $800. Under Islamic finance, you can approach a bank or any other financier and ask the bank to buy the good for you and make it available to you immediately. Of course, that only happens after you and the bank agreed on a payment schedule, which is going to be deferred. So you get your washing machine right away because the bank buys it for you, and you agree to pay the bank back over a year. In return for providing that service for you, the bank will charge you a markup on the price of the washing machine. The next contract is the Saleh contract. Here, an individual sells a product that he or she will possess in the future in return for payment today. The Western equivalent to this is a forward contract. Now, where could this happen? An example is in agriculture, where you have a poor farmer who needs to purchase fertilizer, but he does not have the money yet to pay for it. He therefore approaches a customer who will eventually purchase his crop and says, "My crop has not yet grown, but will you please pay me for it anyway right now, and I will deliver it to you in the future." Now, in principle, this type of contract violates the rule that you should not sell what you don't possess. And that is why it is permissible only under certain circumstances for certain commodities. The next type of contract is the istisna contract. And there's a general definition to it, and then we will look at the financial side. The general definition goes like this. Person A wants to have a product. Let's say person A wants to have a house. He wants it custom made to specifications from raw material that is owned by the manufacturer. Typically, the person for whom the house is built does not actually have the raw materials. That is all provided by the builder. Person A then provides exact specifications of how that custom-made item is to be produced, gives it to the manufacturer, and then person A and the manufacturer agree on what the price of the project should be and what the payment schedule should be. Once that is agreed upon, the manufacturer then custom builds and delivers the product, and the recipient of the product pays according to the agreed upon payment schedule. Now, what does that have to do with Islamic finance? Quite often, manufacturers lack the liquidity to agree to a long-term payment schedule. But at the same time, sometimes individuals, person A who wants a house, lack the liquidity for a short-term payment schedule. And when that kind of mismatch happens, they involve the bank. Specifically, person A involves the bank. And what you get is two back-to-back istisna contracts. The first contract is between person A, who wants the house built, and the bank. The bank promises to deliver the custom-built house to person A in return for a long-term payment schedule. The person A gives the specifications to the bank. This is what I want my house to look like, and I am able to pay for this in installment over 10 years. That is a long-term payment schedule. The bank agrees. Then it takes those specifications and it enters in negotiations for a second istisna contract. And here the bank is the customer. The bank commissions the custom-built item from the manufacturer, and this time the two sides use a short-term payment schedule. So the manufacturer then takes the specification he received from the bank and builds the item for the bank, and then the bank takes the item and delivers it to person A. Now, at least in theory, that's how it works. But of course, a bank is not a shipping company. It cannot, typically it doesn't get products that are shipped to the bank and then shipped from the bank to the ultimate recipient of the item. So there are ways to work around this. But the important thing is that the bank charges person A markup for agreeing to a long-term payment schedule. Under this arrangement, everybody can be made happy. The manufacturer gets to build the item, in this case a house, and gets paid for it fairly soon. Person A gets the house, and it gets an agreement that person A may take 10 years to pay for the house. The bank, in return for bridging that liquidity gap between the person and the manufacturer, can charge a markup on the delivery of the house. Another deferred sales contract is the ijara contract, and ijara means lease. And that is quite the way it is in the West. A person leases an item, and that means that she may enjoy the item in return for a usage fee. She must return the item to the owner unharmed. It cannot be destroyed. What can you lease? You can lease an asset, but you can also lease someone's labor. Let's say person A wants a house built, but in this case, person A owns all the materials. Therefore, he enters not an istisna contract with the manufacturer, because under an istisna contract, it's the manufacturer who owns the material. Instead, person A rents or leases the labor of the manufacturer, hires the manufacturer to work with the materials that person A owns. That would be, therefore, an ijara contract. Let's now look at profit and loss sharing contracts. And here the first contract is the mudaraba contract. You have two partners. One provides the management expertise and the labor, and that is the entrepreneur or the mudarib. And the other one is the provider of finance, the financier or Rabul Mal. The equivalent in our language is venture capital funding or a silent partnership. The financier gives money but does not actually get involved in managing the project. The two contract partners share profits according to whatever mode of profit distribution they have agreed on. In the case of loss, however, the distribution of the loss is specified by the terms of the contract. Specifically, the mudarib loses the return on the work he has put into the project. He put in work and he does not get anything in return for it. So he has lost money in the form of labor. The Rabul Mal is the only one who loses capital The Rabbul Mal can lose his investment capital. What is a two-tier mudaraba contract? Think of deposit holders with a bank. A small savings holder goes to the bank and gives the bank his savings. Now in the West, what happens is you put your savings in the bank invests them in whichever way it chooses. We have no idea what the bank does with the money, but we get a guaranteed interest on it. And that rate is really guaranteed, because even if the bank crumbles, then probably the commitments of the bank are guaranteed by the government. In Islamic finance, things are a little bit different. Here, the investor or the savings holder, the deposit holder, goes to the bank and deposits his money with the bank, and he becomes the financier or the Rabbul Mal. The bank in turn becomes the mudarib or entrepreneur who chooses how to invest that money into a project of the bank's choice. The hope is that the bank will invest it wisely. The deposit holder has no real influence on how the money is managed. This is all done by the mudarib or the bank. Once the bank has found a suitable investment, a suitable project that may return a good amount of money, the bank enters a second mudarib contract with the company in charge of running the project. In the second mudaraba contract, the bank acts as the Rabbul Mal or the financier, and the company acts as the mudarib or entrepreneur who manages the project. The bank does not get itself involved in how the project is being run. Note that under this scheme, deposit holders can lose their money, and that is why this is called profit and loss sharing. In this scheme, a deposit holder needs to make sure that they invest their money with a bank that has a good history of making profit. The next type of contract in the category of profit and loss sharing contracts is the musharaka contract. Unlike the mudaraba contract, which involves two partners, the musharaka contract involves two partners or more. Another difference is that here, under this contract, all partners are allowed to participate in the management of the joint ventures. Remember that under mudaraba, you have a silent partner and you have an entrepreneur who actually runs the project. In musharaka, everybody can participate. However, they are not obligated to do so. The loss is carried in proportion to each partner's investment. If you have brought in 1/3 of the capital, you carry 1/3 of the loss. With profits, there is some dispute over how it should be handled. Some jurists say that the profit should be distributed in proportion to the investment that the partners have brought in. Another school of thought of jurisprudence, says that the profit should be shared according to a previously agreed upon ratio. So the partners at the beginning of their partnership say, this is the ratio by which we will share the profits among us. How you as an investor actually do it depends on what school of jurisprudence you go with.